Care and safety within childcare centres are one of the first items on their agenda this week in the wake of those shocking abuse allegations against Victorian childcare worker Joshua Dale Brown. We are all looking at ways to keep our children as safe as possible when you drop them off at childcare before you head off to work. Kim Bertino is the CEO of Big Fat Smile, one of the state's largest childcare providers. Began here in the Illawarra, of course. I spoke to Kim Bertino about some of these reforms that are being slated at the moment and started off by asking what sort of communication she's felt she's needed to have with parents who drop their kids off at Big Fat Smile services every day.
Look, firstly, can I say that what we're experiencing is abhorrent behaviour, and my heart does go out to those children and families that have been impacted. I've been in the sector for, nearly 40 years, starting as an early childhood teacher, and I have to say I didn't think I'd be confronted with something like this. So I really, feel for parents, and rightfully so. They want to know what we're doing about keeping children safe at Big Fat Smile. We have some very rigorous processes in place to make sure that we can keep children safe. And I think what it goes down to is making sure that you've got, right from the beginning, really good staff screening checks, so that through that employment process that you're able to make sure that you're employing the right people as teachers and educators, and to have really good supervision and a culture of reporting in centres so that people feel like they are able to speak up if there's something happening that they're not sure about, that there's something sitting there that's making them feel a little uncomfortable.
Kim Bertino, I wanted to just talk through some of the things that have been raised as possible reforms, and we know that we're going to see legislation introduced to the Parliament this week. It'll be one of the first orders of business of the new Parliament is to talk about childcare and the regulations around childcare. This notion that the federal government wants to introduce new laws so that childcare operators can have their funding stripped if their safety measures are not up to scratch. What do you think about that as a measure that you could have your funding withdrawn if you are found to not be complying or not be doing enough to keep children safe?
Look, I think if a service or an approved provider doesn't follow the regulations or the quality standards, then there must be consequences for inaction to correct below standard service delivery. So if one of those measures is to reduce funding, then I'm fully supportive of that. I think that, for many of us as approved providers, as operators, we abide by what's in our national quality framework. It is built upon a continuous improvement system, so those providers who are not placing quality at the forefront deserve to have restrictions on their service operations. And I think that goes right across the sector. It's not just for-profits or not-for-profits. It's about making sure that we continually have quality uplift and are creating environments where children are able to flourish in early childhood settings.
There are some other measures that are being talked about, for example, CCTV. I'm not sure exactly. I know that a lot of childcare centres do have CCTV. I'm not sure the degree to which it's mandatory in different parts of childcare centres. I know that different states have had different regulations as well. Can I ask your view on CCTV in childcare centres?
I think this is a really complex matter. We've had many conversations about the value or the risks of CCTV. There are areas where you wouldn't be able to put CCTV in centres for privacy reasons. And then there's also the issue of that you're taking footage of children, and how do we make sure that the visuals of children are kept safe and that it's not being hacked? Cybersecurity is a big issue for us at the moment.
Yeah, and that there's also a lot of talk, and I don't know exactly what the current regulations are, but a lot of experts talking about the need for a minimum of 4 eyes on one child, which is how it's often referred to, meaning there should be at least 2 workers around it at all times, that no child should be dealt with just one-on-one with a worker. What are the regulations around that, Kim, and what happens at Big Fat Smile?
So as an organisation, we do believe that it is really important to have 2 staff with children at all times and with insight and sound. And this is where it's really important that We're abiding by our ratios for staff in the room, working alongside children, and having buildings equipped to allow within sight and sound. So making sure that there isn't rooms where people are left on their own as educators. And we certainly abide by that as an organisation. I think that's really important.
You mentioned earlier that you have very rigorous processes when it comes to screening prospective workers and ensuring that your employees are the best you can possibly find. But I'm wondering as well about this national register of workers so that prospective employers can see if someone's been fired or had complaints filed against them, or there's been some breach, or they've had trouble with a working with children check. There isn't a national register of workers in that way. Do you think there should be?
I absolutely agree that there should be. And I think at Big Fat Smile, we're calling for three things that are really important nationally. A national working with children check, so not just a state-based working with children check. As you said, a national register of educators, so we understand who people are, what their qualifications are and where they've been working, and that we have a single national reportable conduct scheme as well. And these will be concrete actions that will help keep children safe.
What would a reportable conduct scheme look like? That's what if someone has had a complaint made against them, or they've been accused of something that is reportable. Is that what you mean? It would be on their record.
So at the moment we have across different jurisdictions many different agencies that we need to report to. And so we need a system that's far more streamlined that allows us to be able to report matters and that they're dealt with one single body. And I think we've seen in early childhood, but in other sectors where you have different agencies working and you have times where they're not talking to each other. And so there is opportunities for people to fall through the gaps in those systems.
It sounds like of the measures that the federal government and state governments together are looking at, you seem to be supportive of most of them. There is one thing that's been called for that the federal government's rejected. I think the opposition has similarly said we don't think that that's such a good idea. But we have seen abuse survivors call for restrictions on men working in childcare. I mean, a hugely controversial thing. But do you have many male carers working at Big Fat Smile? And what's been the impact on them? What's your view in terms of male childcare workers and potentially any restrictions, or how male childcare workers who work in the sector at the moment are feeling right now?
It's a good point, Mel. Look, I think that males are an important part of our society, and children need great role models of all genders. And so our approach at Big Fat Smile is that this is not a gender issue for us. This is about a behaviour issue, and we really value all of our educators, and our males play a really important part of who we are and the work that we do. And I don't think that we should be looking at restricting males in early education, nor should we be restricting the work that they do, because they're of equal value in providing great teaching and learning for children.
So, Kim Bertino, you started off by saying you've worked 40 years in childcare, and this is a particularly difficult time. What are your overall feelings at this time?
I think this is an opportunity to build the best system. Let us not look back in 10 years and realise that we've let our children down and didn't seize the moment to come together across governments, providers and wider stakeholders with families to ensure our early childhood system gives children, regardless of their circumstances, the best start in life. And there is no place for anyone who does not have the best interests in children to be part of our sector as an early childhood professional.
That's Kim Bertino, the CEO of Big Fat Smile.
A man's gone who doesn't want